horrifying it was when a poor, gaunt woman, just finishing her shift at midnight in the bone-chilling Chicago winter, unwittingly became the sole witness to a bloody execution ordered by a ruthless Russian mafia boss. She had no idea that, mere seconds after locking the diner door, a black SUV had silently begun tailing her. And the hand originally meant to pull the trigger to silence her forever belonged to the very men of Alexander Kane, the most powerful crime lord in the city. But what no one could have predicted was the moment Alexander caught sight of her weary face and desperate eyes on the surveillance footage. The heart that had been ice cold for 20 years suddenly shattered wide open. He gave a new order. "Don't kill her. Bring her to me, alive." Can a man who has lived by blood and power truly change completely because of a single glance? And will that lightning strike love be strong enough to save her from the brutal world he himself created? Or will it drag both of them into an abyss with no escape? Stay with me as we step into this tear-soaked, heart-wrenching story of hope called From Hell to Heaven. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. It was a bitter December night in Chicago, 2025. The kind where the wind off Lake Michigan cut straight through every layer of clothing and bit into the bones. Lily Harper, 28 years old and already worn thin by life, closed the diner on the South Side at midnight for the third night in a row. Her hands trembled as she counted the tips, $11.43, barely enough for a single bag of groceries to feed herself and her 5-year-old son Ethan, who waited at home with the elderly neighbor who watched him for free because Lily could not afford anything else. Lily was destitute in a way that went beyond empty pockets. Her coat was a thrift store find 2 sizes too big, patched with duct tape at the elbows. Her shoes had holes that let the snow seep in, numbing her feet until she could barely feel them. She had lost weight she could not afford to lose. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes ringed with permanent shadows from nights spent awake worrying about the rent, the heat, the overdue medical bills from Ethan's last fever. The apartment they lived in had no hot water half the time, and the landlord had already left 2 eviction notices taped to the door. She had been widowed 3 years earlier when her husband died in a construction accident. No life insurance, no settlement, just debt and a little boy who still asked when Daddy was coming home. Lily worked double shifts at the diner, smiling through cracked lips for tips that never quite covered the basics. Pride kept her from begging, but pride could not fill an empty stomach or keep the heat on. On this particular night, as she locked the diner door and turned toward the dark street, she never noticed the black SUV that had been parked across the road for hours. She never saw the men inside watching her, marking her as the only witness to the brutal execution they had just carried out in the alley behind the diner. A hit ordered by Viktor Volkov, head of the ruthless Russian Bratva that had been pushing into Italian-American territory for months. Alexander Kane, Alex to the few who knew him well enough to live, sat in the back of a heated, armored Escalade 2 blocks away, reviewing security footage on a tablet. 38 years old, fair-skinned, with sharp features and eyes the color of winter steel, he was the undisputed boss of the Kane family syndicate. His suits were custom-made in New York, his watch cost more than most people earned in a decade, and his name alone could silence a room. He had built an empire on casinos, construction contracts, and the quiet, iron control of Chicago's underworld. Wealth surrounded him like armor: private jets, penthouse views of the lake, bodyguards who moved like shadows. Yet inside that armored luxury, Alex carried a gnawing guilt that never slept. 20 years earlier, his father had been gunned down in a drive-by ordered by a rival family. Alex had been 18, holding his dying father on a rain-soaked street, promising vengeance. He had kept that promise, but the victory had tasted like ash. Every year since, the remorse grew heavier. The knowledge that his world of power and money only created more widows, more orphans, more blood. He told himself he kept order, protected his people, but late at night, the faces of those lost haunted him. When his lieutenant called with news of a civilian witness, a young mother who worked at the diner, Alex's first instinct was cold efficiency: eliminate the risk. But the grainy security image showed a thin woman in a patched coat, exhaustion etched into every line of her body, and something in him fractured. He saw his own mother in her face, the woman who had scrubbed floors to keep him fed after his father died. The order to silence her died in his throat. Instead, he gave a different order, one that shocked even his closest men. Bring her to me, alive, and make sure no one else touches her. As Lily walked the dark, frozen street toward the bus stop that would never come this late, headlights flared behind her. A black SUV pulled alongside. The door opened and strong hands pulled her inside before she could scream. Terror exploded in her chest, dizziness, numbness, the world tilting violently. She fought weakly, her malnourished body offering little resistance, her mind screaming for Ethan. Then she looked up and saw the man in the back seat. Alexander Kane's gray eyes met hers, and in that single moment, something fierce and overwhelming surged through him. An instant, consuming protectiveness he had never known. Guilt, remorse, and a violent emotional conflict tore at his heart. He was the reason her life was now in danger, yet he would burn the city down before letting harm come to her. "Don't be afraid," he said quietly, his deep voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Alex Kane, and tonight, I'm the only thing standing between you and the men who want you dead." Lily's world narrowed to the roar of blood in her ears and the leather scent of the SUV's interior. Her thin body pressed against the door as if she could disappear into it. The man beside her, Alex Kane, did not touch her, did not raise his voice, yet his presence filled the entire vehicle like smoke. She could feel the heat radiating from his expensive wool coat, a stark contrast to the icy wind that had been clawing at her patched jacket moments earlier. "Please," she whispered, voice so soft it barely carried over the engine's low hum. "My son, Ethan, he's with Mrs. Delgado. He'll be scared if I don't come home." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this stranger who looked like he owned the city itself. Alex turned his head slowly. His gray eyes, cold as Lake Michigan in winter, softened by the smallest fraction when they met hers. Inside his chest, something violent tore open, a storm of guilt and longing so sudden it stole his breath. He had ordered her death minutes ago. Minutes ago, he had weighed her life against his empire's security like a ledger entry. Now the mere thought of her being harmed felt like a blade twisting beneath his ribs. How could remorse arrive so fast, so completely? "I know about your son," he said quietly. "He's safe. Mrs. Delgado received a call 20 minutes ago. A trusted friend of mine is with them now. No one will touch him." Lily's heart stuttered. Suspicion clashed with desperate hope. "Why should I believe you?" Her voice trembled, but there was steel beneath it, the steel of a mother who had already lost too much. "You kidnapped me." "I did," Alex admitted without hesitation. The honesty surprised even him. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making that right if you'll let me." The Escalade turned onto a wide boulevard lined with glittering high-rises. Lily stared out the tinted window at the world she had only ever seen from below. Doormen in crisp uniforms, women in fur coats, Christmas lights already strung across balconies, even though it was only early December. She felt smaller than ever, her stomach hollow from skipping dinner so Ethan could have the last of the cereal. Alex watched her profile, the way her chapped lips pressed together, the way her thin fingers twisted the frayed hem of her coat. Every detail cut him deeper. He had spent years convincing himself that the people on the edges of his world were statistics, collateral, necessary losses. Seeing Lily, real, shivering, terrified, shattered that lie. "Pull over," he told the driver suddenly. The vehicle slowed and stopped beside a 24-hour pharmacy glowing like a beacon on the dark street. Before Lily could react, Alex opened his door and stepped out into the cold. He returned less than 3 minutes later, carrying 2 large paper bags. He set them on the seat between them. "It's not much," he said, almost apologetically, "but it's something." Lily stared at the contents: a thick wool blanket still in its plastic wrapping, a pair of women's thermal socks, a bottle of orange juice, a package of peanut butter crackers, a small carton of chocolate milk, and, for Ethan, a stuffed polar bear wearing a red scarf. Her throat closed. She had not been able to buy Ethan a single Christmas gift yet. She reached for the blanket with shaking hands, then hesitated, as though touching it might make the moment vanish. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Alex looked away, jaw tight. "Because 30 years ago, my mother stood on a street corner in the snow, holding me, begging for someone to help us after my father was killed. No one did." His voice cracked on the last word. "I swore I'd never let another woman feel that helpless. I failed tonight. I almost made it worse. I won't fail again." Lily's eyes filled. She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. It smelled clean, expensive, nothing like the musty thrift store coats she usually wore. Warmth seeped into her skin for the first time in hours. She hated how good it felt. The SUV began moving again, leaving the bright lights behind. They drove north, past the glittering downtown, past the neighborhoods Lily knew, and into quieter, wealthier suburbs. Finally, they turned onto a private road lined with tall pines. A wrought iron gate opened silently. The the estate, rose into view. Stone walls, tall windows, lights glowing behind heavy curtains. Lily's stomach twisted. This was not a place for someone like her. Alex helped her out of the vehicle. She stumbled on numb legs, clutching the blanket like armor. He steadied her elbow with gentle fingers. His touch was warm, careful, almost reverent. She flinched anyway. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, releasing her. "I won't touch you without your permission. Ever." Inside, the house smelled of cedar and something baking, cinnamon maybe. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace. Lily stood frozen in the marble foyer, her worn sneakers dripping melted snow onto the polished floor. A middle-aged woman in a neat cardigan appeared. "Mr. Kane, everything is prepared as you asked." "Thank you, Margaret." Alex turned to Lily. "This is Margaret, my housekeeper. She'll show you to a guest room. There's hot food waiting, clean clothes, and a bathroom with everything you need." Lily shook her head slowly. "I can't stay here. I have to go home to Ethan." "Your son is already on his way," Alex said. "He'll be here in less than an hour. Margaret's husband drove to pick them up. They're safe." Lily's knees buckled. She swayed, dizzy with fear and exhaustion and the impossible kindness of a man who should have been her enemy. Alex caught her before she could fall, his arms strong, steady, careful. She did not fight him this time. She was too tired, too broken. He carried her upstairs to a bedroom larger than her entire apartment. The bed was piled with white linens and thick comforters. A tray sat on a small table: chicken noodle soup, grilled cheese, apple slices, hot tea. Lily stared at the food as though it might disappear. "I'll be downstairs," Alex said quietly. "If you need anything, Anything at all. Just press the button by the bed. I'll come immediately." He turned to leave. "Wait," Lily whispered. Alex paused in the doorway. "Why me?" she asked, voice cracking. "You could have let them kill me. It would have been easier." Alex's shoulders tensed. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "Because the moment I saw your face on the screen, I remembered what it felt like to be helpless. And because—" he stopped, throat working. "Because something inside me woke up when I looked at you. Something I thought was dead a long time ago." Lily's breath caught. She did not know what to say to that. Alex left quietly, closing the door behind him. Alone, Lily sank onto the edge of the bed. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. Tears came then, silent, unstoppable. Not just for tonight, but for every cold night, every skipped meal, every time she had whispered, "I'm sorry," to Ethan, when there was nothing left in the fridge. Downstairs, Alex stood at the window, staring into the dark. His hands shook. He had spent 20 years building walls of power and detachment. Now, a thin, exhausted woman with haunted eyes had walked through them like they were made of paper. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Guilt clawed at him. Guilt for the danger he had brought to her door. Guilt for the life he had lived. Guilt for the sudden, burning need to protect her that felt both sacred and terrifying. Outside, headlights appeared at the gate. Ethan was here. Alex straightened. Whatever came next, rival gangs, betrayal, war, he would face it. But he would not let Lily Harper walk back into the cold alone, not while he still breathed. The safe house sat deep in the wooded outskirts beyond Chicago's northern suburbs, a place Alex Kane had bought years ago for exactly this kind of emergency. It was not grand like his downtown penthouse or the lakefront estate where he had first taken Lily. This was simpler, a sturdy 2-story cabin of dark timber and stone, surrounded by tall pines that muffled the wind. Inside, the furnishings were comfortable but sparse. One living room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen stocked with essentials, and upstairs, only one bedroom with a single king-sized bed. When Alex explained this to Lily after Ethan had finally fallen asleep in the guest room downstairs, clutching the new polar bear and exhausted from the strange night, she felt the floor tilt beneath her again. One bed, one room. The unfairness of it all pressed down on her like the weight of every unpaid bill, every skipped meal, every night she had lain awake, listening to the radiator clank uselessly, while cold air leaked through cracked windows. "I'll take the couch," Alex said immediately, his voice low so as not to wake the boy. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, broad shoulders filling the frame, expensive cashmere sweater doing nothing to hide the power in his frame. "It's long enough. I've slept in worse places." Lily shook her head, thin arms wrapped around her ribs as if holding herself together. The borrowed flannel pajamas Margaret had given her hung loose on her malnourished body. "No, sir," she said softly, the polite habit of addressing someone older and clearly more powerful, slipping out before she could stop it. "You've already done too much. The couch is fine for me. I'm smaller." Alex's jaw tightened. Inside him, the conflict raged harder than any street standoff he had ever faced. He wanted to insist, to protect her even from discomfort, yet he knew pushing would only frighten her more. The remorse gnawed deeper, remorse for dragging her into his world, for the danger that had forced them here, for the way her eyes still carried the haunted look of someone who expected kindness to vanish at any moment. "Lily," he said gently, stepping just inside the threshold but no farther. "You've been cold too many nights. You've gone hungry so your son could eat. Please, let me give you this one thing without argument." Her breath hitched. Tears threatened again, hot and humiliating. She turned away, pretending to smooth the thick comforter that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The bed was enormous, piled with pillows and a down duvet that looked like a cloud. She had never touched anything so soft. They compromised, the way strangers forced into intimacy often do. Alex fetched every extra pillow and blanket from the linen closet and built a careful wall down the center of the bed, a ridiculous barricade of feather pillows and folded quilts that rose like a soft fortress between them. Lily watched him work in silence, her heart pounding with a confusing mix of fear, suspicion, and something warmer she did not dare name. When the lights were finally turned off, leaving only the faint glow of the fireplace downstairs filtering through the cracked door, they lay on opposite edges of the vast mattress. The silence stretched, thick and awkward. Lily could hear Alex breathing, slow, controlled, but not quite relaxed. She clutched her side of the pillow wall, fingers digging into the fabric as if it could anchor her against the dizziness swirling in her mind. She thought of her apartment, the peeling paint, the mousetraps in the corners, the way the heat shut off at 10 o'clock every night because the landlord claimed it saved money. She thought of the eviction notice taped to her door 2 days ago, the one she had hidden from Ethan. She thought of how she had cried in the diner bathroom last week when a customer left a $5 tip and it felt like a fortune. Beside her, though separated by the wall of pillows, lay a man who could buy entire buildings without blinking. A man whose voice alone made armed drivers obey instantly. A man who had looked at her with something fierce and tender that made her stomach flutter in ways she had forgotten were possible. It was absurd, unfair, cruel almost. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Lily's body ached with exhaustion, but sleep would not come. Every small shift of the mattress reminded her he was there. She could smell the faint trace of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, mingling with the clean scent of the sheets. Eventually, Alex spoke into the darkness, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you warm enough?" "Yes," she answered timidly. Then, because politeness had been drilled into her by a lifetime of needing to stay small and unthreatening, she added, "Thank you, Mr. Kane." "Alex," he corrected gently. "Please." A long pause. "Alex," she repeated, testing the name. It felt too intimate on her tongue. Another silence. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "I'm sorry, Lily, for all of this." Her heart twisted. "You saved my life," she whispered, "and Ethan's." "I put it in danger first," he answered, the words raw. "My world did this to you." She wanted to protest, but the truth of it hung between them like smoke. Outside, snow began to fall, soft flakes brushing the windows. Inside, the room grew warmer from the fire below, yet Lily still shivered, not from cold now, but from the overwhelming strangeness of safety. Downstairs, Alex's phone vibrated once. He had left it on the kitchen counter, but the sound carried faintly. He tensed. Lily felt the mattress shift as he sat up. "Stay here," he murmured. He moved silently down the stairs. Through the cracked bedroom door, Lily watched his silhouette in the firelight as he answered the call. "Talk to me," he said, voice suddenly hard, commanding. She could not hear the other side, only Alex's low responses. "How many vehicles?" "Corner of Peterson and Ridge?" "No, I'm handling this myself. Tell the men to stand down until I get there." He ended the call and stood motionless for a long moment, staring into the flames. Lily saw his shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. When he turned back toward the stairs, his face was set in lines of determination, and something that looked painfully like fear. He paused at the bedroom door. "Volkov's men are looking for us," he said quietly. "They followed a decoy vehicle I sent toward the city, but they're circling closer. I need to go meet them. Make sure they understand you're under my protection now." Lily sat up, clutching the blanket to her chest. "You're leaving?" "Only for a little while." His voice softened again. There are 2 men outside the house, armed, loyal. Nothing will get past them. And I'll be back before dawn. Terror surged through her, sharp, dizzying. What if you don't come back? Alex crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her side of the bed, careful not to touch the pillow wall. Firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the strain around his eyes. I will come back, he said fiercely. I swear it on everything I am, on my father's memory, on the life I still owe you for the danger I brought. His gray eyes burned into hers, and in that moment, Lily felt the full force of the storm inside him. The remorse, the protectiveness, the sudden, overwhelming love that had seized him without warning or permission. It terrified her as much as it steadied her. She reached out hesitantly and touched his hand, the first time she had initiated contact. His skin was warm, strong. He turned his palm up immediately, letting her fingers rest there. Be careful, she whispered, voice breaking. Alex closed his eyes briefly, as though her touch were both salvation and torment. When he opened them again, the emotion in them was almost too much to bear. I'll be back, he repeated. Then, gently, he squeezed her fingers once before releasing her and standing. He shrugged on a dark coat, checked the firearm at his waist with practiced efficiency, and left without another word. Lily lay back down, heart pounding. The pillow wall suddenly felt flimsy, childish. She curled into a ball on her side, facing the empty half of the bed that would soon be his again, if he returned. Down the road, in a tense street confrontation under falling snow, Alex met 3 of Volkov's scouts at an empty intersection. No shots were fired, only words, cold, precise, laced with the kind of authority that came from knowing you held all the power. The Russians left with a clear message. Lily Harper and her son were untouchable. Cross that line, and the fragile truce between families would shatter. But as Alex drove back through the silent woods, his hands shook on the wheel. Not from the confrontation, from the memory of her small, cold fingers in his, from the knowledge that he, a man who had ordered endings without blinking, was now willing to risk everything for a woman he barely knew, and from the terrifying certainty that he was already, irrevocably, in love with her. Back at the safe house, he climbed the stairs quietly. The pillow wall had partially collapsed in his absence, one quilt trailing onto his side like an invitation. Lily lay asleep at last, curled tightly, face softened in the faint glow from the hallway. Alex stood watching her for a long moment, chest aching with a feeling too vast to name. Then, carefully, he rebuilt the barrier higher than before, lay down on his designated edge, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The tension between them had only begun. Dawn crept through the heavy curtains of the safe house bedroom in pale gray streaks, turning the snow outside into a soft, endless white. Lily woke slowly, her body heavy with the deepest sleep she had known in years. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. No leaking ceiling, no thin mattress on the floor, no Ethan's small snores from the corner of the room. Only warmth, only softness. Then she felt it, the steady rise and fall beneath her cheek, the strong heartbeat that was not her own. Her eyes flew open. She was sprawled across Alex Kane's chest, one leg thrown over his, her arm draped around his waist as if she had sought him out in the night. His arm encircled her, gently but firmly, holding her close even in sleep. The pillow wall lay in ruins, pillows scattered across the floor, blankets tangled around their legs like casualties of some quiet battle neither had meant to fight. Heat flooded Lily's face. Horror and shame crashed over her in waves. She, a thin, worn-out waitress who had not eaten properly in weeks, who still carried the faint smell of diner grease in her hair, lay curled against a man whose world was made of power and money and danger. It was wrong, humiliating, unfair. She tried to ease away, but the movement woke him. Alex's eyes opened instantly, gray and alert. For a heartbeat, he went perfectly still beneath her, as though realizing the same impossible truth. Then his arm tightened reflexively, pulling her closer for the briefest second, before guilt and restraint forced him to loosen his hold. "Lily," he whispered, voice rough with sleep and something far deeper. "I'm sorry." She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. Up close, in the soft morning light, she saw the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked as shaken as she felt. "I didn't mean to," she started, her voice small and timid. "The pillows must have fallen. I'll move." But neither of them moved. The air between them thickened, charged with the warmth of shared breath and the weight of everything unsaid. Lily felt every point of contact. Her palm against the soft cotton of his t-shirt, the steady thrum of his heart beneath her fingers, the way his body heat chased away the last traces of cold that had lived in her bones for so long. Alex's inner world was tearing itself apart. Remorse flooded him. Remorse for the danger that had driven her here, for the years he had spent building an empire on fear, while women like Lily scraped by on nothing. But beneath the remorse burned something fiercer, a love so sudden and complete it terrified him. He had spent 2 decades convincing himself he needed no one. Now the thought of letting her go felt like losing the only light he had ever truly wanted. He lifted his free hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was feather-light, reverent. "You were cold in your sleep," he said quietly. "You kept shivering. I only meant to warm you." Lily's breath caught. No one had touched her with such care since her husband died. She should have been afraid. Instead, a dangerous warmth spread through her chest. Confusion, longing, disbelief that this powerful man could look at her as though she were something precious. "I haven't been warm in a long time," she admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Tears pricked her eyes. "Not really warm, not like this." Alex's throat worked. The confession struck him like a blow. He thought of his own childhood, of his mother wrapping him in her only coat on freezing nights, of the way she had gone without food so he could eat. He had vowed never to let that kind of suffering touch anyone he cared about again. Yet here was Lily, suffering still, because of his world. He shifted carefully, helping her sit up while keeping a respectful distance. The cold air rushed between them, and Lily immediately missed his warmth. She hugged her knees to her chest, thin shoulders hunched. Downstairs, Ethan's small voice called out, "Mama?" breaking the spell. Lily scrambled off the bed, legs unsteady, dizziness washing over her from the sudden movement and the intensity of the moment. Alex caught her elbow to steady her, then released her just as quickly. "I'll make breakfast," he said, voice rough. "Take your time." He left the room without looking back, as though he did not trust himself to stay. Lily stood there for a long moment, heart pounding. She touched her cheek where his fingers had been. The ghost of his touch lingered, confusing and terrifying and wonderful all at once. In the kitchen, Alex gripped the marble counter until his knuckles whitened. His chest ached with a pain deeper than any wound he had ever taken. He had faced rival bosses in dark alleys, stared down loaded weapons without flinching, but nothing had prepared him for the vulnerability of holding Lily Harper in his arms and knowing he would burn his entire empire to keep her safe. His phone buzzed on the counter, a text from one of his lieutenants. Volkov's men had been spotted again, closer this time, asking questions in the nearby town. Another confrontation was coming. Alex closed his eyes. The conflict inside him raged, the need to protect her, warring with the knowledge that his protection only painted a bigger target on her back. But the thought of sending her away, of watching her walk back into the cold with nothing, was unbearable. He started coffee, pulled eggs and bacon from the refrigerator, movements precise and controlled. When Lily appeared in the doorway with Ethan on her hip, hair tousled and eyes still wide with the morning's revelation, Alex felt his heart stutter. "Smells good," she said softly, polite as always. Ethan wiggled down and ran to the window, pressing his face to the glass at the snow. "Look, Mama, it's like a Christmas card." Lily smiled, a real smile, small but genuine, and Alex felt it like sunlight after years of night. They ate at the large wooden table, fluffy scrambled eggs, crisp bacon, toast with real butter, fresh orange juice. Simple things, but to Lily, they were luxuries she had not tasted in months. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, while Ethan chattered about building a snowman. Alex watched them, the violent storm in his chest quieting into something achingly tender. He had ordered men to their ends without hesitation. Now he found himself memorizing the way Lily's eyes crinkled when she laughed at Ethan's excitement, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. After breakfast, Alex's phone rang again. He stepped onto the porch to take the call, voice low and commanding. Lily watched through the window as 2 black SUVs pulled up the drive. Men in dark coats emerged, his men, faces serious. Another confrontation. This time, it happened on the narrow road just beyond the property line. 3 vehicles from Volkov's side blocked the way, men stepping out with hands visible, but postures threatening. Alex met them alone in the middle of the snow-dusted road, coat open despite the cold, radiating authority like a force field. Words were exchanged, sharp, clipped, laced with warnings. No weapons drawn, only the weight of reputations and the promise of consequences if lines were crossed. The Russians left with tight faces and reversed vehicles. Message received, but resentment simmering. Alex returned to the house with snow on his boots and tension in his shoulders. Lily met him at the door, Ethan playing quietly with his polar bear on the rug. "Are we safe?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "For now," he answered honestly. Then, softer, "I won't let them near you." She searched his face, seeing the exhaustion he tried to hide, the fierce protectiveness that cost him something each time he used it. "Thank you," she said, the words carrying the weight of everything she could not yet say. Alex reached out, hesitated, then brushed a snowflake from her hair. The touch lingered a fraction longer than necessary. Upstairs, the ruined pillow wall waited like a silent confession. Neither of them mentioned rebuilding it that night. The days at the safe house blurred into a fragile rhythm, each one a quiet battle between fear and the strange growing sense of safety Lily had never known. Snow piled higher outside the windows, turning the world into a white hush, broken only by Ethan's delighted laughter as he pressed his nose to the glass or begged Alex to help him build tiny snow forts on the porch. Alex Kane moved through this new world like a man walking on glass. Every morning he rose before dawn, checking perimeter reports, speaking in low tones on encrypted phones, orchestrating moves that kept Volkov's men at bay. Every evening he returned to the cabin, snow on his coat, tension in his shoulders, but his eyes softened the moment they found Lily. He had neutralized the immediate threat in a way only he could, through calculated pressure rather than open war. In a series of tense, unexpected confrontations on frozen back roads and empty warehouse lots, he met Volkov's lieutenants face to face. No shots fired, only words delivered with the cold certainty of a man who held all the cards. Territories were quietly redrawn. Messages were sent. The woman and child at the safe house were under Kane protection. Touch them, and the fragile peace between families would end. One such meeting happened on a deserted stretch of highway north of the city, under a sky heavy with more snow. Alex stood alone in the center of the road, coat open to the biting wind, as 4 black sedans from Volkov's side formed a loose circle. The Russian underboss, a thick-necked man named Dmitri, stepped out with 2 bodyguards, hands visible but posture aggressive. "You're protecting a witness," Dmitri said in accented English, breath fogging the air. This breaks rules. Alex's voice was steel. She saw nothing that threatens your boss. But if your men come within 10 miles of her again, I will take it as a declaration, and you know how that ends. The standoff lasted minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Dmitri nodded once, tight and resentful, and the sedans reversed away. Alex stood watching until their taillights vanished, then climbed back into his vehicle, hands shaking, not from cold, but from the razor's edge he walked to keep Lily safe. Back at the cabin that night, he found her in the kitchen, stirring soup on the stove. Ethan was already asleep upstairs. The fire crackled low. Lily turned when she heard him, her thin face illuminated by the warm light, eyes searching his for the truth he tried to hide. "Is it over?" she asked softly, voice timid but steady. "For now," he answered. He hung his coat, rolled his sleeves, and moved to help her set the table, simple bowls, crusty bread, butter that melted golden. Ordinary things made extraordinary by the fact that she had not worried about the cost of them. They ate in silence at first. Then Lily spoke, barely above a whisper. "I got a call today, from the diner. They gave my shifts to someone else. Said I hadn't shown up in a week." Her voice cracked. "I don't have a job anymore." The unfairness of it struck Alex like a physical blow. She had lost her livelihood because of his world, because she had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Remorse flooded him, hot and bitter. "I'm sorry," he said, the words rough. She shook her head. "It's not your fault. You didn't make me poor. Life did that a long time ago." She looked down at her bowl. "I was always one missed shift away from losing everything anyway." Alex reached across the table, covering her cold hand with his warm one. She did not pull away this time. "You won't lose anything else," he said fiercely. "Not your home, not your son's future. I swear it." Lily's eyes filled. She had spent years telling herself she did not need anyone, that pride and stubbornness would carry her through. Now, a man who could buy cities with a phone call was promising to shield her from the storms she had faced alone. The contrast was dizzying. Her patched coat hanging by the door next to his cashmere one, her worn sneakers beside his polished boots, her empty pockets against his limitless resources. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Ethan had come downstairs in his pajamas, sleepy but wanting one more story. Alex lifted the boy onto his lap without hesitation, reading from a picture book about a brave little bear lost in the snow. His deep voice filled the room, gentle and patient. Lily watched from the armchair, chest aching with emotions she could not name. When Ethan finally dozed off against Alex's shoulder, Alex carried him upstairs and tucked him in. Lily followed, standing in the doorway as he pulled the blankets high and brushed a kiss to the boy's forehead, light, almost reverent. Downstairs again, the fire had burned low, only embers glowed. They stood close without meaning to, the air between them thick with everything unspoken. "Alex," Lily whispered, using his name for the first time without prompting. "Why does it feel like I've known you forever when I only met you days ago?" His breath caught. The inner conflict tore at him harder than ever, the knowledge that he did not deserve her trust, her warmth, her anything. Yet the love that had seized him that first night only grew fiercer, more consuming. "Because some things don't need time," he said, voice raw. "Some things just are." He reached for her slowly, giving her every chance to step back. She did not. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away tears she had not realized were falling. Then he leaned in and kissed her, not demanding, but tender, desperate, pouring every ounce of the remorse and protectiveness and overwhelming love he felt into that single contact. Lily's world tilted. Shock and longing crashed through her in waves. She rose on her toes, thin arms wrapping around his neck, kissing him back with all the hunger of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted, to be safe, to be cherished. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads resting together. "I'm terrified," she admitted against his lips, "of this, of you, of what happens when the danger ends and you realize I'm just me." Alex's arms tightened around her waist, careful of her fragility but fierce in their hold. "You are everything," he said, voice breaking. "Everything I never knew I needed. And I will spend every day proving you wrong about just me." Upstairs, the bed waited. No pillow wall this time. They lay together, fully clothed, her head on his chest, his arms around her like a shield. Sleep came slowly, wrapped in warmth and the steady beat of his heart. Outside, another report came in. Volkov had pulled his men back entirely. The immediate threat was gone. Alex had won this round, not with force, but with the sheer weight of his reputation and the quiet promise that harming Lily Harper would cost more than anyone was willing to pay. In the darkness, Alex held her closer, guilt and love warring inside him. He had protected her life. Now he had to figure out how to protect her heart, from the world and from himself. Lily drifted off, listening to his heartbeat, dreaming for the first time in years of a future that might not be cold. The snow finally stopped falling on the 7th morning, leaving the woods around the safe house wrapped in a silence so complete it felt sacred. Lily stood at the kitchen window, watching Ethan chase snowflakes with the new mittens Alex had quietly left on the table the night before. Bright red ones, soft as anything she had ever touched. Her own hands, still thin and cracked from years of washing dishes and cheap detergent, wrapped around a mug of real coffee with cream that did not come from a powdered packet. The warmth seeped into her palms, into her chest, into places she had forgotten could feel anything but ache. Alex had been gone since before dawn, called away by another urgent message. She had woken to an empty bed and a note in strong, slanted handwriting. "Back by noon. Lock the door behind my men. A." She had traced the single initial with one fingertip, heart fluttering in a way that terrified her. He returned just as the sun broke fully over the treetops, his black Escalade cutting fresh tracks through the snow. Lily watched from the porch as he stepped out, coat unbuttoned despite the cold, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. He carried 2 large paper bags from a famous Chicago Italian bakery, cannoli, fresh brioche, a box tied with red string. Simple things, but to Lily they were extravagance beyond imagining. Ethan ran to him without hesitation now, arms outstretched. Alex swung the boy up easily, laughing in a way Lily had never heard, deep, genuine, unguarded. The sound cracked something open inside her chest. They ate at the table like a family that had always existed. Powdered sugar on Ethan's cheeks, Alex tearing off pieces of warm brioche and feeding them to the boy when he asked. Lily watching with tears she refused to let fall. Every bite tasted like kindness she did not deserve. After Ethan went down for his nap, the cabin grew still. Outside, the world was white and endless. Inside, the fire snapped and settled. Alex poured 2 glasses of deep red wine, something old and expensive he had brought from the city, and handed one to Lily with a hesitation that looked foreign on him. "I don't usually drink before evening," he said quietly, "but today feels different." Lily took the glass with both hands, afraid her trembling would spill it. "Different how?" He did not answer right away. Instead, he led her to the couch in front of the fire, sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. They stared into the flames for a long time. Then, softly, he began to speak. He told her about his father, gunned down on a rainy street when Alex was 18, dying in his arms while sirens wailed too late. He told her how he had clawed his way up from nothing, how every dollar, every territory, Every fearful bow of a rival's head had been payment for that night. How he had built walls of money and power so high he thought nothing could ever touch him again. But they were lonely walls, he said, voice raw. I told myself loneliness was the price of strength. Then I saw you on that security feed, thin, exhausted, walking into the cold with $11 in tips and the weight of the world on your shoulders, and something in me broke wide open. Lily's breath caught. Tears slipped down her cheeks without permission. I have spent 20 years believing love was a weakness I couldn't afford, he continued, turning to face her fully. But losing you before I ever truly had you, that would destroy me more than any bullet ever could. The words hung between them, heavy and irreversible. Lily set her glass down with shaking hands. You don't know me, she whispered. You don't know what my life really was. The eviction notices, the nights Ethan cried because his stomach hurt and there was nothing but saltines. The way I stood in the grocery line counting pennies while people stared. I'm broken, Alex. Poor in ways money can't fix. He moved then, slowly, carefully, and took her face in his warm hands. You are the strongest person I have ever met, he said fiercely, and I am the one who is broken. I just have better wallpaper. The kiss that followed was not gentle. It was years of loneliness crashing together, his mouth on hers, desperate and reverent, her fingers clutching his sweater as though he might vanish. They kissed like people drowning who had finally found air. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both were shaking. I love you, he said against her lips, the confession torn from him like a wound. I loved you the first moment I saw your face, and it terrifies me because I have never been this afraid of losing something. Lily made a small, broken sound. I'm afraid too, she breathed. Afraid this is a dream. Afraid I'll wake up back in my freezing apartment with the eviction notice and no food and... He silenced her with another kiss, deeper this time, lifting her onto his lap as though she weighed nothing. She felt the hard evidence of his want beneath her, but there was no demand in it, only need, only worship. His hand slid under the borrowed sweater, tracing the sharp lines of her ribs with something close to anguish. I will never let you go back to that, he vowed between kisses. Never. They did not make it upstairs. The rug in front of the fire became their world. Clothes shed with trembling urgency, skin against skin for the first time. Alex worshipped every inch of her thin body with his mouth and hands, kissing the hollows beneath her collarbones, the faint stretch marks on her belly from carrying Ethan, the scars on her knees from years of kneeling to scrub floors. He touched her like she was sacred, like she was the only thing keeping him human. Lily cried through most of it, silent tears of disbelief and overwhelming feeling, as he moved inside her with a tenderness that broke her apart and put her back together. When release came, it was shattering for both of them, her name on his lips like a prayer, his tears mixing with hers. Afterward, they lay tangled under a thrown blanket, firelight dancing over their skin. Alex held her so tightly, she could feel his heart trying to hammer its way out of his chest. I meant it, he whispered into her hair. Every word. You are my family now. You and Ethan. Whatever it takes. Lily pressed her face to his throat, inhaling the scent of him, expensive soap and wood smoke, and something that was only Alex. For the first time in years, the constant ache of hunger and fear was gone, replaced by a fullness so complete it hurt. Outside, another vehicle approached, his men, reporting that Volkov had agreed to a sit-down in the city tomorrow. A final line in the sand. Alex felt Lily tense. They won't touch you, he promised again, arms tightening. I'll end this once and for all. She nodded against his chest, trusting him in a way that both healed and terrified her. In the quiet aftermath, with Ethan still napping upstairs and the fire settling into embers, they lay together in the glow, two people who had survived different kinds of cold, finally warm in each other's arms. The breakthrough was complete. Nothing would ever be the same. The fragile peace lasted only 4 days. Alex returned from the city late one evening, snow clinging to his coat, face harder than Lily had ever seen it. He found her in the kitchen baking cookies with Ethan, simple sugar cookies from a mix Alex had brought, but to the boy, they were magic. Lily looked up, smile fading at the storm in Alex's gray eyes. "What happened?" she asked softly, wiping flour from her hands. He waited until Ethan was asleep before telling her. They sat by the dying fire, his voice low and controlled. "Volkov didn't just pull back," he said. "He's spreading word in the streets that I've gone soft, that I'm risking everything for a waitress from the South Side. My own people, some of them, are starting to listen." Lily's stomach dropped. The warmth of the cabin suddenly felt thin, like a blanket too small for the cold. "Your people?" she whispered. "The ones who work for you?" Alex nodded, jaw tight. "A few lieutenants, older men who remember when weakness meant death. They're saying I should send you away, that keeping you here invites war." The unfairness of it crashed over her like ice water. She had done nothing, except walk out of a diner at the wrong moment. Now an entire underworld was judging her existence as a threat. "I'll go," she said quickly, voice trembling but resolute. "I'll take Ethan and disappear. You can tell them you sent me away. I won't let you lose everything because of me." Alex was on his knees in front of her in an instant, hands gripping hers with desperate strength. "No," he said fiercely. "You are not leaving. I won't lose you." Tears filled her eyes. "But your family, your empire, is nothing without you," he finished, voice breaking. The inner torment was visible now, guilt twisting with love, remorse clashing with the fierce need to protect. "I built all of it to keep people safe. If I send you back to the cold, to eviction and hunger and fear, then what was any of it for?" Lily pulled her hands free and stood, wrapping her arms around herself. She walked to the window, staring out at the endless white. "I heard them talking," she said quietly. "Your men outside. One of them said you were thinking with your heart instead of your head, that a woman like me doesn't belong in your world." Alex rose slowly, crossing to stand behind her. He did not touch her, but she felt his presence like a shield. "A woman like you," he repeated, voice rough, "is the only kind worth having in my world." She turned then, tears streaming. "I have nothing, Alex, nothing to give you. No money, no power, no connections. Just debt and a little boy and years of scraping by on pride and pennies." He stepped closer, cupping her face gently. "You have everything," he said. "You have courage I've never seen. You have a heart that kept loving after life tried to crush it. You have Ethan's laugh. You have the way you look at me like I'm worth saving. That's more than I've ever had." But the external pressure grew. The next morning, while Ethan played in the snow with one of the younger guards, Lily overheard a phone call Alex took on the porch. His voice was ice. "Tell Marco if he questions me again, he can find another family to serve. I've made my decision." Marco, his childhood friend, his underboss. Lily's heart sank further. Even the people closest to him were turning. That afternoon, the obstacle became real. A black sedan arrived, not one of Alex's. 2 men stepped out, hands visible, faces respectful but firm. They asked to speak to Alex privately. Lily watched from the window as the conversation unfolded in the driveway. Tense words, sharp gestures, no weapons drawn, but the threat hanging heavy in the air. When Alex came back inside, his face was stone. "They brought a message from my council," he said. "An ultimatum. Send you and Ethan away by tomorrow, or they'll vote to remove me." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. Dizziness swept over her. She gripped the counter to stay upright. "Remove you?" she whispered. "From your own family?" Alex nodded once. "It's never been done before, but they're scared. Volkov is using this, using you, to push harder. If I look weak, others will join him." The injustice of it burned. She had spent her life being powerless, landlords raising rent she could not pay, bosses cutting shifts, utility companies shutting off heat in winter. Now, even in safety, her mere existence threatened the man who had saved her. "I'll go," she said again, voice breaking. "I'll take Ethan and—" Alex crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel his heart racing. "No," he said against her hair. "I won't lose you. Not to them, not to anyone." But that night, as they lay together in the dark, no space between them now, her head on his chest, she felt him tremble. "I'm scared," he admitted into the silence, the confession torn from deep inside. "Not of losing power, of losing you, of waking up one day and realizing I chose the wrong thing." Lily pressed closer, tears soaking his shirt. "I'm scared you'll regret me," she whispered, "when the novelty wears off, when you see how ordinary I am." He rolled her beneath him gently, framing her face with shaking hands. "You are the least ordinary thing that has ever happened to me," he said, voice fierce and breaking. "And I will fight every person in my world to keep you." They made love then, slow, desperate, clinging to each other as though the outside threats might tear them apart at any moment. Afterward, he held her like she was the only solid thing left in his universe. But the council's deadline loomed. The next morning brought the final confrontation. Alex met them on a frozen industrial road outside the city, 6 of his own men, led by Marco, waiting in a loose semicircle of vehicles. Snow swirled around them. Words were sharp, loyalties tested. Marco, his oldest friend, spoke with pain in his voice. "You're risking everything for a woman you barely know." Alex's reply was quiet but unbreakable. "She's not a risk. She's the reason." The standoff stretched, tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Marco stepped back, face conflicted. "We'll give you 1 week," he said. "Prove this doesn't weaken us, or we vote." They left without another word. Alex returned to the safe house hollow-eyed. Lily met him at the door, Ethan playing quietly behind her. "1 week," he said simply. She nodded, throat tight. In the stillness that followed, they stood together at the window watching snow fall again. The obstacle was clear now, his world demanding she leave, her heart demanding she stay. Neither was willing to give. The conflict had only begun to tear them apart from the outside. But inside, their love burned brighter for it. The week's deadline hung over the safe house like a storm cloud that refused to break. Alex spent his days in the city, meeting with allies, reinforcing loyalties, staring down whispers of doubt. He returned each night exhausted, but his eyes always sought Lily first, as though her presence alone recharged whatever strength the day had drained. Lily tried to keep the cabin a haven. She baked with Ethan, read him stories, folded laundry with hands that no longer shook from cold. But the fear grew inside her, a quiet, gnawing terror that she was a weight dragging Alex under. Every time his phone buzzed with another urgent call, she felt the unfairness of it deeper. Her poverty, her powerlessness, had not ended. They had simply changed shape. On the 5th night, Alex came home later than usual. Snow had started again, heavy and wet. He stood in the doorway, shedding his coat, face drawn, eyes haunted. "They're pushing the vote forward," he said, without greeting. "Tomorrow night." Lily felt the blood leave her face. She swayed, gripping the back of a chair. Ethan was already asleep. The house was too quiet for such news. "Then it's decided," she whispered. "I'll pack tonight. We'll be gone by morning." Alex crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled her against him, arms like steel bands. "No," he said, voice raw. "I won't let them take you from me." She pushed at his chest weakly. "You have to. They're your family, your legacy. I'm just... You are my family, he cut in fiercely. You and Ethan. The rest, I'll burn it down before I lose you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. The inner tearing was unbearable now, love and guilt twisting together until she could barely breathe. That night they did not sleep. They lay facing each other in the dark, fingers intertwined, whispering fears they had never spoken aloud. I need you to know something, Alex said finally, voice barely audible. Before tomorrow, in case everything changes. Lily's heart stuttered. What? He took a breath that sounded like it hurt. For 15 years, I've run a foundation. Anonymous. No name on the buildings, no plaques. It funds clinics in poor neighborhoods, pays medical debt for single mothers, covers rent for families about to be evicted. Scholarships for kids whose parents can't afford books. Lily went very still. I started it after my mother died, he continued. She spent her last years worrying about money while cancer ate her alive. I swore no one else would face that if I could stop it. He reached for the bedside lamp and turned it on low. Then he opened the drawer and pulled out a thin folder, printouts, photographs. One photograph showed a small clinic on the south side with a simple sign, Harper Health Center. Lily's breath caught. Harper, her last name. Another page, a canceled medical debt statement from 3 years ago, the exact amount she had owed after her husband's accident, the one that had kept her chained to double shifts and empty cupboards. Another, a scholarship award letter for Ethan, dated for when he would start school, full ride, books, uniforms, everything. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. Tears streamed unchecked. You, she choked. It was you? All this time? Alex's eyes were wet. I never told anyone, not even Marco. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because I could, because I remembered what it was like to be powerless. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her tears. And 3 years ago, when your husband's file crossed my desk, widow, small child, drowning in debt, I cleared it the same day. I didn't know your face then. I didn't know your name beyond the paperwork, but I knew your story, and I've been watching over you from a distance ever since. Lily made a broken sound and collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. The revelation was too vast, shock, gratitude, love, all crashing together until she felt dizzy with it. All those times I thought no one saw us, she whispered. All those nights I prayed for a miracle and hated myself for praying. You were the miracle. Alex held her tighter, his own tears falling silently into her hair. The remorse that had lived in him for decades cracked open, spilling out. I didn't save you soon enough, he said, voice ragged. I let you suffer longer than you should have. If I'd known, if I'd seen you. She silenced him with a kiss, desperate and salty with tears. You saved us when it mattered most, she said against his lips, and you've been saving us all along. They clung to each other through the night, the secret binding them closer than any vow. The unfairness of her past poverty felt smaller now, not erased, never erased, but carried by someone who understood its weight. Morning brought the final confrontation. Alex met Marco and the council in an old warehouse on the edge of the city, neutral ground, snow piling against the doors. The air was thick with tension. Marco spoke for the others, voice heavy with years of friendship and fear. We love you, brother, but this weakness... Alex interrupted quietly. It's not weakness. He laid the folder on the table between them. The same photographs, the financial records, proof of the anonymous foundation that had quietly kept hundreds of families afloat. I've been protecting the weakest among us for 15 years, he said. Without credit, without leverage, because it was right. Keeping Lily and her son safe is no different. It's the same thing, only now it has a face I love. Silence fell. Marco stared at the documents, face paling as he recognized the scope of what Alex had hidden. "You never told us," he said finally. "I didn't do it for praise," Alex replied. "I did it because someone had to." One by one, the men looked away, some ashamed, some moved. The vote never happened. Marco stepped forward last, eyes wet. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Forgive me." Alex clasped his oldest friend's shoulder. Already done. When Alex returned to the safe house that afternoon, Lily was waiting on the porch, Ethan building a snowman beside her. She ran to him the moment he stepped from the car, throwing her arms around his neck. "It's over?" she asked, voice trembling. "It's over," he confirmed, lifting her off her feet. "They know now. They understand." Relief crashed through her, leaving her weak. She buried her face in his coat, breathing him in. Inside, by the fire, he told her everything. She listened with wide eyes, the secret philanthropy wrapping around her heart like the warmest blanket. "You were my guardian angel before you ever knew my name," she whispered. Alex kissed her forehead, then her lips, slow and reverent. "And now I get to be that for the rest of our lives," he said. Openly, completely. The first twist had turned the tide. Their love, tested by external threats and internal doubt, emerged stronger, rooted now in a history neither had known they shared. The path forward was clearer, but the deeper storms still waited. The first days after the council's reluctant acceptance felt like breathing after being underwater too long. The safe house no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a beginning. Alex moved freely between the city and the woods, his men now openly protective instead of watchful. Ethan's laughter echoed through the rooms more easily. Lily began to let herself hope. Real hope. The dangerous kind that could shatter if touched too hard. Yet, beneath the fragile peace, something new stirred inside her. It began quietly. A wave of nausea one morning while making breakfast. A sudden dizziness when she stood too quickly. Exhaustion that sleep could not cure. She told herself it was stress, the aftermath of weeks of fear, the body's delayed reaction to safety. But deep down, she knew. She had been here before, with Ethan. On the 10th morning after the confrontation, while Alex was in the city for a brief meeting, Lily slipped away to the small bathroom upstairs. She had found a pregnancy test in the medicine cabinet, unopened, probably left by some previous guest, and her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. 2 minutes later, she sat on the closed toilet lid, staring at 2 pink lines that felt louder than any shout. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind, bringing a storm of emotions she could not separate. Joy, terror, disbelief, shame. Joy because another child, Alex's child, meant love made real. Terror because she was still thin, still healing, still carrying the scars of years when one missed meal meant hunger for 2. Shame because she had nothing to offer this new life except a mother who had spent years counting pennies for milk and diapers. She pressed her hand to her flat stomach and wept, silent, shaking sobs that left her breathless. The unfairness crashed over her again. She had just begun to believe she could have a future, and now another child would arrive into a world she still did not fully trust. When Alex returned that afternoon, snow dusting his shoulders, he found her curled on the couch, knees drawn up, eyes red. Ethan was napping. The house was too quiet. He knelt in front of her immediately, hands hovering, afraid to touch. "Lily?" His voice cracked with worry. "What's wrong?" She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who had already changed everything. The man who had secretly carried her burdens for years. The man who had chosen her over his empire. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The words hung between them. Alex went perfectly still. For one terrible heartbeat, Lily feared he would pull away. Then his face crumpled, not with regret, but with something so raw it stole her breath. He sank to the floor between her knees, forehead resting against her stomach as though in prayer. Tears, silent, unstoppable, fell onto her borrowed sweater. "Alex?" she breathed, hands hovering uncertainly above his head. He lifted his face, eyes shining. "A baby," he said, voice thick. "Our baby." The joy in his voice shattered her. She cupped his face, thumbs brushing away his tears. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm still so small. I don't have anything. I've been hungry for so long. What if I can't?" He rose to his knees and gathered her close, burying his face in her neck. "You will never be hungry again," he vowed, the words fierce against her skin. "Never cold, never alone. I swear it on everything I am." But the inner conflict raged harder than ever. Guilt clawed at him, guilt for the danger he had brought into her life, guilt for the years she had suffered while he lived in wealth, guilt that this new child would be born into a world he had helped shape with violence and power. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Any of this. You, Ethan, another child. I've spent my life taking. Now life is giving me everything, and I'm terrified I'll ruin it." Lily pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "You already gave," she said softly. "You gave before you even knew us. Clinics, scholarships, debt relief. You gave without asking for anything. And now you're giving me a future I never dared dream of." She placed his hand over her stomach, still flat, still uncertain. "This baby," she whispered, "will grow up knowing what love looks like, because of you." Alex closed his eyes, tears slipping free again. The violent storm inside him, the remorse, the love, the fear, felt almost too vast to contain. They sat together on the floor for a long time, wrapped in each other, letting the news settle like snow. Later, when Ethan woke and demanded to play outside, they bundled him into the red snowsuit Alex had bought. While the boy built snow angels, Alex and Lily stood on the porch, watching. "I want to do this right," Alex said quietly. "No more hiding, no more shadows. I'm stepping back from the day-to-day. I'll keep the legitimate businesses, casinos, construction, investments, but the rest ends." Lily turned to him, eyes wide. "You're giving it up?" "Not all of it," he said, "but the parts that keep you in danger. I'll hand control to a council. I'll be a figurehead at most. I want to be here, with you, with Ethan, with..." He placed his hand gently over her stomach. "With our baby." Tears slipped down her cheeks again, happy ones this time. But even in this moment of joy, the external world pressed in. That evening, word came that Volkov had heard of the council's reversal. A final, desperate push was expected. Alex received the report while Lily bathed Ethan. He stepped onto the porch to take the call, voice low and lethal. When he returned, his face was set. "One last confrontation," he said. "Tomorrow night. Volkov himself wants to meet." Lily's heart seized. "You're going?" "I have to end this," he said. "Face to face. No more proxies." She reached for him, fingers trembling. "Promise me you'll come back." He took her face in his hands. "I promise." The next night, on a deserted stretch of Lakeside Road, under a sky heavy with stars, Alex met Viktor Volkov. No weapons visible, only two men each, respectful distance, but tension thick enough to taste. Words were exchanged, cold, precise, final. Volkov tried intimidation. Alex countered with quiet certainty. When Volkov mentioned Lily by name, Alex's voice turned to ice. "You speak her name again, and there will be no more talks," he said. "Only consequences." Volkov studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, reluctant, resentful, but accepting. The truce was sealed. Alex drove home through the dark, heart pounding with relief and something deeper. The knowledge that he had chosen love over power, and the world had bent to it. When he walked through the door at dawn, Lily was waiting, awake, anxious, wrapped in one of his sweaters that swallowed her thin frame. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "It's over?" she breathed. "It's over," he confirmed, lifting her off her feet. They stood in the foyer, holding each other as the first light of morning touched the snow outside. The second twist, her pregnancy, had not broken them. It had forged them anew. A family, fragile but unbreakable, was growing in the quiet spaces between fear and hope. And for the first time in decades, Alex Kane felt something like peace. Peace, it turned out, was only a pause between storms. The weeks following the truce with Volkov passed in a glow Lily had never known. Spring crept toward Chicago, melting snow into rivulets that ran like tears down the safe house windows. Her body changed slowly. Morning sickness that left her pale and trembling, a faint curve beneath her palm that Alex touched with reverence each night. He was gentler than ever, bringing ginger tea without being asked, reading baby books in the firelight while Ethan slept curled against his side. Yet beneath the tenderness, Alex carried a new weight. He had begun the slow process of stepping back, transferring day-to-day operations to trusted lieutenants, focusing on legitimate ventures. Marco, his oldest friend, had taken the largest share of responsibility. Alex trusted him completely. Marco had stood beside him since they were boys, running errands in the old neighborhood, had held him together the night his father died. That trust made the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. It began with small things Lily noticed first. A guard's glance that lingered too long. A phone call Alex took outside that ended with his face pale. Then came the night everything shattered. Alex had gone into the city for a final meeting, handing over keys to warehouses, signing papers that would distance him from the shadows. Lily tucked Ethan in early, reading him 2 stories instead of 1, her hand resting protectively over the tiny life inside her. The knock came at 10 o'clock, sharp, urgent. One of the outer guards, voice tight through the intercom. "Ma'am, we have a situation. Mr. Kane's been delayed. Marco's on his way with news." Lily's heart stuttered. She opened the door to Marco's familiar face, snowflakes melting on his dark coat. He smiled, the same smile she had seen 100 times, but something in his eyes felt wrong. "Where's Alex?" she asked softly, polite even in fear. "On his way," Marco said, "but we need to move you and the boy. Volkov's made a play. It's not safe here anymore." Before she could protest, 2 more men appeared, men she recognized, men who had guarded the house for weeks. They moved quickly, gathering Ethan from his bed, wrapping him in blankets while he blinked sleepily. Lily's world tilted. Dizziness swept over her. She gripped the doorframe. "Wait," she whispered. "Let me call Alex." Marco's hand closed gently but firmly around her phone. "No time," he said. "He sent me personally." The lie should have been obvious, but fear and trust warred inside her. Trust in Alex's world, trust in the man he called brother. They drove through the dark in silence, Ethan asleep against her shoulder. The city lights gave way to industrial outskirts, then to a deserted warehouse district Lily did not recognize. When the car stopped, cold dread pooled in her stomach. Marco opened her door. "Inside," he said, voice flat now. "Volkov wants proof you're alive before he releases Alex." The betrayal hit her like ice water. "You," she breathed, clutching Ethan tighter. "You sold him out." Marco's face twisted. Regret, resentment, something darker. "He's gone soft," he said quietly, risking everything for a woman and a kid. The family deserves better. Lily backed away, heart pounding so hard she felt faint. The warehouse loomed, doors yawning open. Inside waited Volkov's men, and Alex, bound to a chair in the center, blood on his lip, eyes blazing. He saw her and went deathly still. "Lily," he rasped. "Ethan." Marco shoved her forward. Ethan woke with a cry, clinging to her neck. Volkov stepped from the shadows, smiling thinly. "Mr. Kane," he said, "you chose love over power. Now you watch it die." Alex strained against the ropes, muscles corded, face contorted with rage and terror. "Don't touch them," he snarled. "Take me. Whatever you want. Territory, money, my life. Let them go." Volkov laughed. Too late for bargains. Lily's legs gave out. She sank to her knees, Ethan sobbing against her. The unfairness of it all crashed over her. The years of poverty, the brief taste of safety, the new life growing inside her, all to end here in a cold warehouse because of a friend's betrayal. Marco stood apart, face pale, unable to meet Alex's eyes. Alex looked at him then, really looked, and the pain in his gaze was worse than any wound. "Why?" he asked, voice breaking. "We were brothers." Marco's jaw worked. "Because you forgot what it takes to survive," he said. "Love makes you weak. I did this for the family." Alex's eyes closed briefly, tears slipping free. The inner torment was visible now, the shattering of a lifetime's trust, the guilt that he had failed to see it, the terror of losing Lily and Ethan, and the child he had only just begun to dream about. Volkov raised a hand to signal his men. In that moment, something snapped inside Lily. She had been powerless her whole life, powerless against poverty, against grief, against the cold, but not against this, not when it came to her children. She set Ethan down gently behind her, whispering, "Stay there, baby. Close your eyes." Then she stood, thin, trembling, but unbroken, and stepped between Volkov's men and her family. "No," she said, voice soft but steady. "You want to hurt him? You go through me." One of Volkov's men laughed and reached for her. Lily moved without thinking. She grabbed the heavy flashlight from the nearby table, one Alex's men had left, and swung with all the strength her malnourished body could muster. It connected with the man's knee, a sickening crack. He went down howling. Chaos erupted, shouts, movement, but no shots. Alex roared, straining harder. Marco lunged, not toward her, but toward Volkov, face twisted in sudden horror. "Enough!" Marco shouted. "This wasn't the deal!" The betrayal within the betrayal. Marco turned on Volkov, drawing his weapon, not to threaten Lily, but to aim at the Russian. "I said take Kane," he snarled. "Not the woman, not the kid." Volkov's smile vanished. In the confusion, Alex broke free, one rope loosened by struggle, strength born of desperation. He surged forward, tackling the nearest guard, fists precise and brutal. Lily grabbed Ethan and ran for cover behind crates, heart pounding, tears blinding her. When the dust settled minutes later, Volkov's men were subdued, disarmed, on their knees. Marco stood over them, breathing hard, face ashen. Alex crossed to Lily in 3 strides, pulling her and Ethan into his arms, holding them like he would never let go. "I've got you," he whispered over and over. "I've got you." Later, in the quiet aftermath, police lights far away, loyal men arriving, Marco knelt before Alex. "I was wrong," he said, voice broken. "I thought I was saving the family. I almost destroyed it." Alex looked at him for a long moment, pain and forgiveness warring in his eyes. "You almost destroyed everything," he said quietly. "But you stopped it. That matters." He offered his hand. Marco took it, tears falling. The betrayal had nearly cost them everything. But Lily's courage, born of a mother's love and years of surviving the unsurvivable, had turned the tide. In the car ride home, Ethan asleep in the back, Lily rested her head on Alex's shoulder, hand over her stomach. "I was so scared," she whispered. Alex kissed her temple, arms tight around her. "You saved us," he said, voice thick. "My brave, impossible woman." The shock of the night lingered, a wound that would scar. But in its wake, their love burned fiercer, forged in fire, unbreakable now. The worst had come, and they had survived it together. The warehouse night left scars that no amount of time could fully erase, But it also forged something unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, Alex Kane made good on his promise. He called a final gathering of the family, not in a warehouse, but in the sunlit dining room of his lakefront home, where Ethan played with toy cars on the rug and Lily sat quietly at his side, her hand resting protectively over the gentle swell of her belly. One by one, the lieutenants arrived. Marco came last, eyes downcast, carrying the weight of what he had almost destroyed. Alex met him at the door, clasped his shoulder, and spoke words only they could hear. Forgiveness, hard-won and complete. Around the long oak table, Alex laid out the future plainly. "I'm stepping away," he said. "The streets, the collections, the old ways, they end with me. The legitimate businesses, casinos, real estate, construction, will continue under a council. Profits will fund the foundation openly now. No more shadows." Some men shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded slowly, seeing the wisdom in a world that had nearly cost their boss everything. Marco spoke first. "You're doing the right thing," he said, voice thick. "I almost took it all away because I didn't understand. Knowledge comes hard sometimes, but this lesson, I'll carry it forever." The others agreed. The vote was unanimous. Alex Kane walked away from the empire he had built, keeping only what was clean. The power remained, quiet, financial, untouchable, but the danger faded like morning fog over Lake Michigan. Months passed in a rhythm Lily had never dared imagine. Spring turned to summer, her body rounding with new life, her cheeks filling out from meals she no longer had to count. Ethan started kindergarten with a backpack full of supplies and a scholarship that bore Alex's name openly now. Doctors visited the house regularly, nutritionists planned meals, and Lily learned, slowly, tearfully, that it was safe to eat until she was full. Alex watched her bloom with a reverence that never dimmed. Every night he held her close, hand over her belly, whispering apologies for the years she had suffered alone and promises for every tomorrow. The baby, a girl, arrived on a warm September morning in 2025, born in the master bedroom overlooking the lake, surrounded by the soft voices of family. Alex held Lily's hand through every contraction, tears streaming down his face, whispering encouragement and love until their daughter drew her first breath. They named her Grace. In the quiet nights that followed, with Ethan asleep down the hall and Grace nursing at Lily's breast, Alex would sit beside the bed and speak of knowledge earned the hard way, of how power without compassion was empty, of how wealth without generosity was loneliness wearing expensive clothes. He spoke of lessons learned in warehouses and safe houses, that love is stronger than fear, that education, of the heart as much as the mind, can change a man forever, that true knowledge comes not from taking, but from giving. Lily listened, tears slipping silently, and added her own lessons, that poverty teaches endurance, that desperation teaches gratitude, that a mother's love is the fiercest force on earth. One evening, as summer faded into autumn, they stood on the wide porch watching the sun set over the water. Ethan chased fireflies in the yard. Grace slept in a bassinet beside them. Alex wrapped his arms around Lily from behind, hands resting over the place where their daughter had grown. "I used to think strength was never bending," he said quietly. "But real knowledge is knowing when to change. The greatest lesson life ever taught me was you." Lily turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had once been untouchable and was now simply hers. "And the greatest education I ever received," she whispered, "was learning that love doesn't care about bank accounts or past mistakes. It only cares about the heart willing to choose kindness every single day." They married quietly the following spring, on the same lakeshore where Alex had once stood alone with his empire. Only close family attended, Marco as best man, Ethan carrying rings on a velvet pillow, Grace in Lily's arms wearing a tiny white dress. No grand displays of wealth, just vows spoken honestly, rings simple and true, and a promise to build a life rooted in the lessons hardship had taught them both. Years later, travelers along Lake Michigan would sometimes see a tall, fair-skinned man walking hand in hand with a dark-haired woman, two children running ahead collecting stones. They would look like any happy family, and that was the point. Love, they had learned, crosses every divide, wealth and poverty, past and future, fear and hope. It asks only for open hearts and the courage to choose each other every day. Knowledge of this truth had saved them. The lesson of compassion had healed them. Education of the soul had made them whole. And in the end, that was enough. Thanks for watching this story all the way to the end. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, hit the like button, and share it with someone who needs to remember that love always finds a way. Drop a comment below. Tell me how this story made you feel, or if you've ever seen love overcome impossible odds in real life. I read every single one, and your words mean the world. I wish you all good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. See you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.